everyone, welcome to Move the Finish Line. I'm your host, April Nowlin, and if you're looking for a podcast that's authentic, unfiltered, that may make you laugh and might make you cry, you're in the right place. Get ready for an exciting ride with me and my guest as we share stories of resilience, restoration, and winning at life from everyday women. My goal is to encourage you to break through the barriers that are stopping you from chasing your purpose. All right, let's get ready to move the finish line. Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Move the Finish Line. I am very, very excited for my guest. She is someone that I've known, maybe longer than maybe 5 or 6 years. And it's one of those things where I don't remember exactly how I met her. I remember being at a friend of ours' house whose name is Eunice. And I remember her being there. And then all of a sudden she was a part of my life. And I don't ever want her to not be a part of my life. So welcome to the podcast, Isha Cogborn.
Thanks so much for having me, April. Yeah, look, you've got me doing mental math now. Like, how long has it been? It feels like it's been longer than that. But because I've been in Arizona 11 years now. And I know I've known you more than half of the time I've been here. But it's been a long time. We'll say that.
It has been. And it's funny, 11 years. Wow, 11 years.
Yeah, that time went by so fast.
It's been a long time.
There are times when it feels like I've only been here about 5 years or so, but the funny part about it is this is the longest that I've ever lived anywhere my adult life. Before I was an entrepreneur, I was in corporate America, and I was one of those people that they liked to relocate a lot. Mm-hmm. So I had already made was getting ready to make my third move when I was only like maybe 8 years into my career. And then that was when I ended up getting laid off like during that time period. So this is the first time I've ever just been planted and been still for a while. And it's funny being here so long and not being around family, but I like it here. I really, and here is Arizona for those of you who don't know, but I really like the energy of Arizona.
Yes, it's funny you say the longest place. So I've lived in Arizona 28 years, but the house that I lived in, I've been here 6 years. It's the longest time I've ever stayed in one place my entire life. So I definitely know that feeling of kind of being settled and being settled into one place. So Isha, tell us a little bit about what you do, who you help, and just how you got started.
So at the foundation of everything that I do, it's really about helping people to connect their purpose and their passion with their profession. I was one of those people that was, when I was in corporate America, making really good money, working for a company that people would have done anything to work for, but realizing that I wasn't happy. And I just thought that was the way life had to be. And then I realized it didn't. And so when I realized that, I wanted other people to know it too. And so the way that I do that work, sometimes it's me going in and doing training on personal branding in a company, helping people to really find their place within that organization. And sometimes it's coaching people to start their own businesses. And more, though, the work that I do really focuses, it's kind of been this journey. It's like the people who are in corporate and not happy, let me help you to find more happiness. And for the people that have started that entrepreneurial journey, let's support you and help you to make this thing work. And then for the people that have kind of progressed to that next stage, it's how do we really help you to build a platform to make a bigger impact with your work or your message. And so those are kind of the 3 different phases that I work with people in. And we have, actually completely different companies that we're doing that work through.
That is exciting. I was talking to a friend a few days ago, and we were talking about how a lot of our friends and colleagues are essentially living their purpose, right? But 10 years ago, we couldn't say that. And we thought, well, is it age? Is it time? I think a big part of it is the work that you're doing, right? So people don't have to wait until you're in your 40s or 50s to be like, I can choose to walk out my purpose and be happy. They can work with someone like you and be happy in their 20s or 30s, right? And not have to wait until later in life.
Yeah, but you know what? I think part of it is just there. In some cases, we figure it out early. But for some of us, I think for a lot of us, it takes living some life to figure out, okay, this isn't what I want. Some people just show up on the scene and they know it. You know, you read a book or you meet somebody, you job shadow, you're like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I've got to figure it out. But for most of us, even when we think we know, that isn't the case. Like I work with a lot of people who are engineers, and somebody at some point in high school told them, you're good at math, you're good at science, you should be an engineer. And so they thought, oh, I know what I want to do. I want to be an engineer. And then they became an engineer and realized, oh, this is nothing like what I thought it was. And so I think by the time a lot of us get to our 30s, start approaching our 40s or get there, then we realize, hey, this is what I thought I wanted. But now that I'm here, this ain't it.
Absolutely.
And so then that sets us on that path of discovery. But I will say that for people that are in their 20s or even younger, there is a level of self-awareness that we are encouraged to operate in today, that for those of us who are in our 40s, 50s, and certainly those, who are older than that, that wasn't even a conversation. The conversation was, you go get a job with some good benefits and you stay there and you be happy until you retire and get your gold watch and your pension, and you go be happy then.
Yes.
And that is just, we've, I guess, kind of evolved a lot more on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, we've kind of gotten to that self-actualization point to where it isn't about survival anymore. We want to be happy. We want to live on purpose. We want to make an impact. And so people are approaching their professional lives now, starting from that point and thinking about that from the outset and not as an afterthought.
Yes. I talk about, so for myself, I'm the only entrepreneur in my family. The rest of my family are what I call lifers, right? So they did exactly what you said. They went to school, they got a degree for something, they're working in that, they'll retire and live a happy life. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Mm-hmm. But there are some of us that we woke up one day and went, that just didn't work for me. So you talked about sometimes people kind of know what they want to be when they're younger. And so you had this big dream as a kid for, we talk about what do you want to be when you grow up, but you had this big dream. So share with us what your big dream was when you were younger.
So from the time I was probably about 8, I remember God literally showing me glimpses of my future. And it wasn't like, it would just be a picture. Like I would see myself like as I'm literally in that place and I could see the things around me, what was happening around me. And I didn't always know like, oh, this is the job title. It would just be me in a place doing a thing. And so I would see me on stages. I would see me on TV. I would see, there was always an audience. There was always me pouring out or doing something that was beneficial to the people that were in that audience. And so from that, I thought, okay, well, let me go into journalism because that's how you get in front of an audience, right? I'm not an actor, I'm not a singer, I'm not, because again, this is 40 years ago almost, right. So a lot of the ways that we can reach an audience today, those things did not exist back then. Social media didn't exist. You couldn't build your own platform. And so for me, it was, okay, I'll go into journalism because if I'm a news anchor, I have an audience, I have a platform, I have the ability to then be invited onto other platforms because you always saw the news anchors emceeing events and fundraisers and throwing their name behind causes and being able to have this positive impact because of the platform that they had. And so that was what I saw for myself early on. And then I didn't really know what to do with it other than, okay, go to journalism school. And then I get to my senior year and realize I don't like news. It's kind of depressing. And it's either I'm going to be a depressive alcoholic because I'm going to take all this stuff home with me every day, or I'm going to end up having to harden myself into something that I'm not, so that I'm not feeling the emotions of every story we cover. And neither of those options really sat right with me. And so I ended up going into corporate PR, but woke up one day and just realized, I started coming back to those pictures from my childhood and realized that nothing that I'm living right now in what my professional life looks like, even though it's good, I make good money, I travel, I can take my son on nice vacations multiple times a year. This doesn't look like those pictures that I saw in my head. Mm-hmm. And so then I had to start exploring what that looked like. But I will tell you, it made people very uncomfortable because I had, quote, made it. I had gone from, and it wasn't a straight line. I got pregnant the week before I left for college. And so had gone from being voted most likely to succeed to most likely to be a welfare queen. And everybody thought I just completely threw my life away. And so to then pack up my son a year and a half later, go back to college, finish college, get a good job. It was kind of like, woo, okay, she's back on the right track. And then, so when you start talking about wanting to quit a job and start a business, it's like, what is this craziness that you speak of? Like we
girl, you crazy. Out. You got a good job and a good paycheck.
Exactly. Don't you mess up that good paycheck, girl. You know how our families can talk. So it was, everybody wasn't always excited to hear me expressing things that were against the status quo. But again, I just kept coming back to this picture that I saw. And I knew this is the life I'm supposed to live. This stuff is not getting me there. So I got to figure out what's going to get me there.
Oh, that's so good. Isn't it funny how when God gives us a big dream, he never lets it die? Like we might forget for some time, but he'll be like, nope, that dream is still there. It's still here. It's still waiting for you. And it's almost like, when you have an annoying fly, right? And you're like, oh, we just dealt with a fly a couple of days ago.
Yes.
And so that fly, it was like every time we turned around, this fly was somewhere around us. And it's kind of like that with your big dreams, right? It's like you may shoo them to the side for a little bit. And it's like, man, you popping back up right again and again. So you're in this career field, right? You're making that good money, but you still got this dream. So what was it that made you say, you know what? I'm going to step out here and I'm going to pursue this?
Well, I'll tell you, there were two things. Well, no, they kind of happened around the same time. 2008, Halloween, my brother was murdered. He was 39. And I remember him being just like so full of potential, so full of promise. He was a musician out in LA. He had gotten a record deal. They used to play in clubs across LA. They were kind of this underground sensation. And there were some things going on in his life, and being able to look at it now with the lens that I can look at it through, he was dealing with some mental health challenges. I mean, that's really what it was. And he self-medicated. And that lifestyle led, ultimately to him being murdered, unfortunately. And we still to this day don't know who did it. It's still an unsolved case. But I remember not only grieving, but being angry with him because I felt like you had so much talent and you squandered it. And what God showed me during that period is, okay, you're no better. You are doing the exact same thing, because what he put inside of me was not for me to be, kind of pigeonholing in this little box working for a corporation. And what God also showed me was that and at the time, I think I was about 32 or 33. And what he also showed me is that if I stayed there, I wasn't going to make 40 either. My brother died at 39. He didn't make 40. And God clearly told me, if you stay there, you're not going to make 40 either. And although there had been times that I was ready to go, I was frustrated, I had gotten physically sick, there was always something that kind of pulled me back in. I'd get a new role, I'd get stock options, I'd get a really good promotion. Something always just lured me back in. And after my brother died, that was when I made the decision that, okay, there's no amount of money that they can offer me, no other role they can give me that is going to take my focus off of me figuring out what I'm supposed to be doing. And even in that process, because I still didn't have a very concrete picture of this is what you're supposed to do, this is the path. But as I would get one little nugget, I would just act on it. So I knew coaching was going to be a part of that. So even though I was working crazy hours and traveling and all that with work, I enrolled in coaching school. So I was, taking classes 9:00 at night or 6:00 in the morning before I would go to work, and making progress that I could make towards figuring out whatever that next thing was. And so when I got laid off in January of 2009, I knew I wasn't going to look for a job. This was the thing that I was waiting for. It's time to really, really figure this out now.
It's funny how I feel like sometimes God pushes us out the nest, like the mama bird, and it's like, look, it's time for you to fly. It's time for you to do what I've called you to do. But the other interesting thing that you said was you knew there was more, but you didn't have all the details. And when I think about one of my favorite characters, and for those of you who know me know, I wanted to be him as a kid, but it's Indiana Jones, okay? That's who I was going to be when I grew up, was Indiana Jones. But there is a portion in the movie where he's chasing after the the Holy Grail, and he's got to follow this path. And he gets to this portion where there is a cavern, but the instructions tell him to take a step. But he's like, there's nothing there. But the instructions tell him to take a step. And so he takes this sand and he throws it over the cavern. And guess what? There was a bridge there. And so I feel like sometimes that's the way our faith works, right? Where God is like, I just need you to take a step. And we're like, God, I don't see the bridge. But he's like, I got the bridge. I just need you to take a step. So when you were ready or, pushed out of the nest and needed to take a step, what did those few steps look like for you?
So the steps for me, first of all, it was figuring out, what does this even look like? And it's no different than if, somebody, when I was trying to figure out coming out of college, do I want to be a reporter, news anchor, whatever it was? I started talking to people who were doing the things that I thought I wanted to do and shadowing them. And I realized I don't want to do that. And so that was one of the things that I did as I started trying to figure out what this looks like. Okay, let me read books. Let me hire a coach. Let me go to conferences. Let me, do things that help me to broaden my picture in terms of what this could look like, and to figure out what is the step I can take now. I can't quit my job tomorrow, but I can enroll in coaching school right now. I can get my certification. I can read books. I can go, and part of that is really understanding the season that you're in. And I think sometimes so many people are afraid to take that step because they're thinking they have to clear to the other side immediately. So God shows you, oh, I want you to start a food truck. And you think you got to go get a loan and buy the vehicle tomorrow. But maybe that start is, all right, let me just find a Facebook group of some people that have food trucks.
Yes.
And just see what kind of stuff they're talking about. Let me do some informational interviews with some of these folks. Let me see if I can go apprentice somebody or volunteer to work one day a week on somebody's food truck to see what this feels like and if this is something I want to do. And so it doesn't have to be an all or nothing proposition. The season may not be the big step. It could just be, let me educate myself. And that's step one. Then step two may be, let me start laying that foundation. And so for me, laying that foundation was, I need to go get my own computer, because this computer that sits in my house belongs to this company that I work for. And I can't do my stuff on their computer. So let me buy my own computer. Let me design my business cards. It was little things like that. Let me get a PO box. So literally the day that I got laid off, that very next day I ordered my business cards.
Nice.
They were designed, they were ready to go. And so I rolled up into an event that next week with business cards.
Yes.
So
yeah, there's so much power in preparation. So much power in preparation. So you've prepared, you're laid off, you got your business cards, you got your PO box, you ready to go. So now you step out in business. And, you know, a lot of times when we take that first step, we're so excited because we have arrived and we're ready and we're about to do this. But sometimes life says, oh, I got some surprises for you. So share with us what those first few, months or years look like for you after you stepped out.
So the first few months, even probably years, I just felt like I was flying by the seat of my pants because I didn't expect it to happen as fast as it did. From that moment that I committed that, okay, there's nothing that is going to take me off course. This is where we're going. That was like the end of November. I got laid off the middle of January.
Wow.
And so it happened a whole lot faster than I anticipated. So I didn't have my perfect plan together. And so it was very much building the plane as I was flying it. And we were okay for a while because I had a good severance. At one point, I had a contract that kept me working, doing corporate trainings every other week. And so I was able to have additional income coming in. But at the same time, I had a lot going out. I was living in Michigan. My son lived in Arizona. And so then I was flying back and spending 10 days a month in Arizona every single month. So it was like I was maintaining two households on a beginning entrepreneur's budget,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That was, there was a lot of money going out of the door and not as much coming in as had been before, And before I knew it, the savings were getting depleted. And I ended up moving to Arizona. So all new expenses there. And then things weren't happening as quickly. The contracts weren't closing as quickly. Things were starting to slow down. There was a time when I could be in a bind and I could literally just get up in the morning and during my prayer time, be like, okay, Lord, I need $3,000 by the end of the day. Show me what to do. And they'd be like, okay, make this call, propose this thing, and I do it. And I'd have my $3,000 by the end of the day.
Wow.
But that's not a business strategy.
No, it's not.
And so that's only going to work for so long and so often. And then it got to the point where it wasn't working. And then I decided, all right, well, this is, my bank account's looking kind of ugly here. I'm going to go get a job. So I started applying for jobs. I couldn't get a job. I had never in my life interviewed for a job that I did not get. I could not get jobs that I was overqualified for. I probably couldn't have gotten a job at Circle K if I wanted to. I could not get a job. And so then I found myself in this place where things are drying up. I'm not bringing in any money. I can't get a job. And it's just and this is before you had all the gig economy stuff. So it wasn't like I could even just go drive Uber or, any of that stuff. None of that existed because I could have gotten by with that back in the day, but none of that existed. And so before I knew it, I was literally I'm at home working, knock on the door, and it's the sheriff with an eviction notice.
Wow.
Because time just ran out on me. And for people who know me, they know I am a very independent person. I don't ask anybody for anything. I never have. That is not a part of my makeup. And I had to pick up the phone and literally ask a friend, can I come live with you? I don't know for how long, but I have to get out. And that was one of the most difficult phone calls I've ever had to make. And I'm a grown woman. I'm in my late 30s by this time.
With some degree.
With a degree, had been used to making six figures, to go from owning a home, all of that, to having to pick up the phone and ask somebody, can I come stay with you? I don't know for how long. That was craziness. It felt like I was irresponsible. It was like, how did I get to this point? But it wasn't that I hadn't done the things.
Right.
It just, sometimes it doesn't work out.
That's so true. Or it seemingly doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So that reminds me, one of my favorite Bible stories is the story of Joseph, right? So he's got this big dream and he tells the wrong people his big dream and they end up selling him. He gets bought by someone and he thinks, this is it, I've arrived. Then he gets accused of something. He ends up in jail and he's like, wait, what? And then, someone tells him, hey, I'm going to remember you and I'm going to put it in good word. 2 years go by, nothing happens. And it's like, wait. And so I'm sure along this journey, like you said, you had to be feeling like this was a mistake. Like this was crazy. Like I'm out here supposedly doing what I'm supposed to do. And now this is happening. So what did you do in that season to get you through that?
Well, I tell you, it's funny that you talk about Joseph, because that is the person in the Bible that I relate to the most. And, I think it kind of started early for me. If I think about, what did I do during that time? One of the things I think that I recognized very early in life, and this even goes back to getting pregnant at 17, I realized very early on that there are things that happen in our lives, whether it is things that we contributed to, like our actions or inactions created this negative environment, or things that happened to us. But just because something happens that isn't desirable or is outside of your plan, one of the things I realized very early on is that doesn't mean that you still can't get there. This is just a blip. This is just a blip on the radar. Okay, I got pregnant at 17. I'm still the same person that y'all voted most likely to succeed. That didn't change. I am the same person. Mm-hmm. Me getting pregnant is a blip on the radar. So whatever I was capable of doing back then, I'm still capable of doing now. It just may take a little longer.
Yeah.
And so even in that period where it was like, okay, now we've got to regroup, we've got to figure things out. At the same time, it was the vision that I saw, the things that I was building, they're still valid. Mm-hmm. It's just, need some time to take a step back and figure out what needs to be tweaked, what needs to be changed. How do we keep furthering our work towards the achievement of the goal, although it may look different and it may take longer, but that doesn't mean it's off the table.
Yes.
That meant going to get a job for one.
Go. And as entrepreneurs, when we make it seemingly right, so we're out there, we're doing our thing, we've got our business cards, we got a little bit of business coming in, that J word becomes kind of a dirty word in our book. And sometimes it is associated with failure, or you missed the mark, or you couldn't do it. And those are, emotions that we have to just push through in those moments. But you had to go out and you had to get a job. So when you got this job, though, how is it different for you than when you got jobs in the past?
Well, the interesting part about it is, going in and getting a job as a business owner, because it was when I interviewed for that job, although I kind of downplayed it, but they knew I had a business. They knew I'd been a full-time entrepreneur for the past 5 years. And it was actually the work that I had done in my business that really attracted them to me. Because it's like, well, you built all of this on your own for yourself. Well, goodness, what could she do for us when we got a few resources to throw at her? And so, but at the same time, I never said, well, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
And so I still had clients. I get up in the morning and I'd have clients at 6 o'clock in the morning before I go to work. And on the weekends, I just basically shut down everything. I wasn't hanging out. I wasn't, doing a lot of the stuff maybe that I used to do, because I spent that time working on my business still. And so a lot of the volunteer activities, things like that, they got cleared off the table after a while, at the point that I decided I didn't plan on being there forever. Right. Now I would tell you, when I got the job, the first one there, I'm like, this is a year, do this for a year. I'm going to stack my money. And by this point, I was back out on my own. I had a little condo and, doing all that. But it was like, we're just going to stack our money and then we're going to quit in a year. Well, the work wasn't that hard. And so I'm like, well, this is comfortable. They're giving me a paycheck every 2 weeks. I got benefits. I can travel. I can buy clothes. I'm like, this is cool. I'm still kind of doing my business on the side. But at some point, again, like you talked about that annoying little fly, the vision came back and it's like, no, this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah, you needed to rest for a little while. You got your rest. Now let's get back at it. Yeah. And so I knew when that season was over, that season of rest that I needed, allowing somebody to give me a paycheck every 2 weeks, I knew when it was over. And so when that was over, that was when I started really working on that exit strategy again. Do my earnings need to look like? That recurring income that I need to have coming in on a regular basis to be able to quit. And so I started working on that plan again while I was still working.
I love how you called it the season of rest, because sometimes when we think about a season of rest, I think we think about we doing nothing, right? And I don't think that's the case. I think God knew that you needed rest from the way you were running your race previous to that, so that you could recoup, you could heal, and now you could have a solid plan for an exit strategy. So when it was time for you to step out again, you were solid, you were ready to go. And so the other thing I think, or I feel like we do sometimes, is in those seasons of rest, we feel like we shouldn't be productive. But productivity looks different, right? So you had a period of rest, but at the same time, you were building. You were preparing and you were planning. So like you said, now you're in this nice job, you've got a nice paycheck, that fly is back, and now you're building your exit strategy. So what did that look like for you so that you did not end up in the same place you were before you got that job?
Well, the interesting thing about it is, so going back to the picture. So the pictures that I saw of my life when I was 8 years old, even at the point that I, had been in business for 5 years, what I was building if I looked at where is the percentage of my revenue generating activity, what am I doing the most? It was coaching, but that wasn't what those pictures looked like that I saw. And so then I had to take that step back and say, okay, because the world has changed now, there are different tools, different resources. I know how to do this thing in a way that I didn't know how to do it 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So what does it look like to build the business of my dreams, really, not the business that brings in money today? Because when you have to eat off of that thing, sometimes you say yes to business models or clients or income streams that aren't necessarily the things you want to do most. They're the things that are most reliable. Yeah. And so during that time when I was working and letting somebody give me a paycheck, had that corporate sponsor, then I was able to say, okay, now how do I restructure the way that I operate this business, the people that I work with, that gets me closer to the business of my dreams? And so for me, that meant not working so much with the type of clients that I worked with before, and working on things that were more around the platforms, because that was the thing I always saw. It was the stages, it was speaking, it was media. And so this shift took me not just, now how do I create these opportunities for me, but it is because I have this body of knowledge on how to do this and how to develop these strategies and how to train people, how to do media coaching, how to do, speaker coaching, all these things. let that be the focus of the business. Mm-hmm. And then as I start to develop this talent around me, then we can start implementing the next steps of what that vision looks like. And I've made a lot more money operating this way. And again, it was more aligned with the picture that I saw at 8 years old. And I couldn't make that shift. And if I had to rely on living off of my business at the time, because it took time to build the programs. Right. It took time to figure out what it was going to look like. And so being able to build all that out with the paycheck gave you just a sense of calm, to be able to not be desperate, because people can smell desperation.
Yes, they can.
You know, if you're desperate to get clients and then you're, okay, well, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just give me some money. We don't want to function like that. If you got a role like that, just let somebody give you a paycheck.
Yes. So, go get a job and just get a paycheck.
Yeah. And so it feels good now to know that what I'm building is truly in alignment with what I know I was put here for. And even during that period of time that I went back to work, there were things that I learned, new things that I learned, because technology was continuing to change, things that I brought to that organization, contacts that I made in the media, because I started doing, media pitching locally here in Phoenix, where I hadn't been doing a whole lot of that. So all things continue to work together for good, even though it seemed like, well, this wasn't a part of the plan.
Yeah, one of the things that I try to do is ask God, what do I need to learn from this season? Yeah. And I feel like you are a perfect example of learning from your seasons. And I think that's what allows God to trust us with bigger, because if we learn from a season, he's like, okay, I can give you more. But it's when we don't learn from a season and we keep repeating, or the way I look at it is, God will give us a test and we're going to keep taking that test till we pass it. And so I feel like listening to your journey, you were like, okay, I'm going to pass this test. And I'm going to pass this test. But it didn't start with your business. I believe it started, like you said, with getting pregnant at a young age. God was like, okay, I'm already setting you up to be able to push through some things, though you didn't know it, right? He was like, I'm already setting you up with the strength that you need to push through. So now fast forward, 10, 15 years, you are now pursuing this dream. You're about to, leave this big greats. And I remember you being at that job. And I remember you saying like, all right, this is just for a year. This is just for a purpose. And I remember I've got an exit strategy and this is what I'm doing. And this is what I'm preparing. And I remember when you relaunched and I was like, oh my goodness, like she for real, you're doing big things. But a lot of people didn't see the behind the scenes. They didn't see that journey. So now you're at this place where, you're ready. You're ready to step out again. What were some of those, maybe emotions or even fears that you had about stepping back out there?
I was a lot more cautious. And it, and for good things, it made me look at my numbers a lot more. It made me, doing things that people do in businesses, because again, when I started out, it was flying by the seat of my pants. I got pushed out the door with this severance package. Let's figure out how to start this business. But this time being a lot more intentional around, okay, what does the pipeline look like to bring new clients in? What are those recurring revenue numbers that we need to make sure we're bringing in? All right, if we know that at this point, we've got this amount of business that's going to be dropping off, what are we doing to make sure that we're replacing it before it completely goes away? All these things that you ought to be thinking about in business, but sometimes you're not, because all you're doing is just being in survival mode every day.
Yes.
And so being able to have that luxury of the paycheck for a while allowed me to set that structure in place and even get people in place to support me. Because even going back to having to pick up that phone and say, I need a place to stay, that forced me to a place where my little independent self had to learn how to ask for help. And so then as now I'm sitting here with this bigger business, in this bigger vision. And I know that I can't pull off these things by myself. So who are the people that I need to support me? And that means you got to pay people. That's a scary thing. Because no matter whether you got business coming in or not, or whatever, you got people on contract, they need to get paid, and they get paid before you get paid. And so that can be a scary thing. But just knowing, being able to step back and really see the big picture and operate a little more methodically, but still understanding that when it comes to entrepreneurship, everything isn't going to always go according to the plan.
No.
And if you think it does, you probably need to continue to just let somebody give you a paycheck, because that's not how this thing works. But just because it doesn't work according to the plan does not mean that you still can't get there. You just may need to adjust the plan.
Yes, I love it. You just might need to adjust the plan.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we get this path stuck in our mind. And as humans, we don't want to shift. And God is telling us, look, you're going to have to go left instead of right today. And it's like, but I want to go left. And God is like, okay, go and go left and see what happens.
Yeah.
When I told you to go right.
Yeah.
Well, Isha, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I'll tell you just one other thing, though, that I had to realize, and this kind of started back from early on in my life too. When I was a child, I used to kind of get in my head and get mad at myself because I would see opportunities in front of me and think, okay, well, you knew you wanted to do that. How come you didn't chase after that? You should have made that happen. And as I got older or wiser, one of the things that I realized, just because you see something at the time, again, doesn't mean that you have to chase it at the time. So it comes back to the seasons thing again. And there are things that God placed in my head 20 years ago that I am just starting to do right now. And that didn't mean I was lazy. That didn't mean I was, not doing what he told me to do. But I think he just showed me those things early on so that I could see how the pieces were going to fit together, so that there were certain decisions that I would make a certain way, certain relationships that I would pursue that would set me up to open up those doors when they were time. But to learn to have the peace of knowing that as soon as you get the vision, doesn't mean that that vision is for today.
That is so good. Going back to Joseph, right? He got a vision from God, and that vision took many, 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 many years and twists and turns. But just like that little fly, your vision doesn't go away, right? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, so one of the pillars that I stand on is doing the work, right? What does doing the work as an entrepreneur mean to you?
It's funny because I just posted something on social media. It said, dreams don't work unless you do. And I think that's even like one of my pinned photos on Twitter. And it sits in front of my desk as I look out right now. So that's a constant reminder to me. So doing the work is, okay, you've got the big vision. Now let's take and pick that thing apart and figure out, what can I do today that gets me closer to it? And it may be something as simple as listening to this podcast, reading a book, joining an organization, whatever that is. But there's always something that you can do. And so we've got to stop making the excuse that we don't have the time, we don't have the money, we don't have the support, whatever else it is, whatever other reason that you're giving yourself to let yourself off the hook to not get any closer to it. Do one little thing, but there's always work that you can do right now that is going to get you closer to it. And just like Indiana Jones, when you go ahead and you just put that foot out there and take that first little step, the next one will appear, and the next one, and the next one. But if you never do that first little thing, no matter how inconsequential it seems, you're going to be in the exact same place 5 years from now, still talking about what your vision is and what you think you can do one day, and getting upset with other people as you see them living their dream. And then you want to hate on them and talk about how sloppy their stuff is because you could do it better. But guess what? They're doing the work. Yeah. As raggedy as it may be, they're doing the work. And so 5 years from now, they would have figured it out, and you'll still be sitting here criticizing people. because their stuff looks raggedy and you would do it so much better. Do the work. Stop talking about it and go do something.
Yeah, look, y'all see why I keep her as my friend. Look, I can't fail being around her. I just can't. She won't let it happen.
Man, I'm telling you, absolutely right. Yeah, that perfectionism, that's another thing too. You got to let go of that. Allow yourself to make mistakes, because you will, and it's okay. Nobody will die. I have failed many times. I didn't die. It reminds me of that quote. If you've seen The Hangover, it's like, you know, when you're talking about Mr. Child's driving, like, but did you die?
Right.
You know, so you might make some mistakes, but did you die? Yeah, I was homeless, but did I die? No, I'm still here. I built back better. And, you know, we keep moving. And I learned those lessons. I can help other people learn from my lessons, and we keep moving.
That is awesome. Oh, I love it. Look, she didn't spark me to try to go start another business. No, I'm kidding, y'all. I got enough. I got enough business. I'm good. I'm good. Well, Isha, thank you so much for being here with me today. Like I said, you are someone that I admire. You're a friend, you are a sister, you're a confidant. I've watched you, you know, on your business journey. I applaud you. I support you. I pray for you. I love you, all those amazing things. So I just appreciate you being here. Thank you again for being on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'm just so giddy to see you pouring out your gift to the world and having this platform to be able to, you know, help those people to move closer to that thing. And just that whole concept, the podcast, your book, you know, your coaching around Move the Finish Line. I think so many people are frustrated because it doesn't happen in the timing that they thought it was going to happen, and they give up. And you don't have to give up. You know, you're the one putting that time constraint on yourself. And so I'm just so excited for the work that you're doing and the way that you're blessing people. So keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you. So Isha, where can my audience connect with you if they want to learn more about the amazing things that you are doing?
So I'm going to make it easy for you. Probably the easiest thing to do, because, you know, it's like I could throw out social media and this, that, and other. Yeah, whatever. You know, here's what you need to do. Text me. Just send me a text. Here's a number. 480-568-2745. 480-568-2745. Send me a text. You can just say, hey, heard you on Move the Finish Line. You can just say, hey, Isha, whatever. You don't have to write a book, you know, just right. But if you connect in, send me that text. That is going to plug you into the Epiphany Institute family. And then we can let you know of all the other resources that are there to help you.
Awesome. Thank you again, Isha. And thank you everyone for joining me again for another episode of Move the Finish Line. I am looking forward to season 2 coming in 2022 with some very exciting surprises for you guys. So once again, thanks for joining me, and get out there and move your finish lines. All right, y'all. Now, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I pray that it encourages you and you were able to laugh a little bit along the way. Now, if you know someone who has a story of resilience, restoration, and winning at life, let me know. I would love to share their story with my audience. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you guys don't miss a beat. If you want to connect with me, hop over to aprilnowlin.com, where you can learn all about how I help women to cultivate their purpose so they can impact more people. You can connect with me on Facebook and Instagram and Clubhouse under April Nowlin. Thanks again for listening.